This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Here's your host, Brandon Contes.
Alrighty, welcome to episode 76 of the Awful Announcing Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Contes, and this week we are joined by longtime NFL reporter who you can see on First Take, Get Up, and all over ESPN. She is Kimberley A. Martin. Kimberley, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. I'm curious, as you're able to sit back and kind of watch the dysfunctional Jets do their thing, do you miss being on the Jets beat?
I'm not going to lie. There are days when I go back to the facility and I see all the beat writers that I was on the beat with. And there's that feeling of nostalgia, but it is nice when I get to just hop my car and leave it behind for a second. Listen, being a beat writer is awesome. You get to be in the locker room every day. But I was on the beat when we had planes flying overhead, during practice, wanting the GMs to be fired, and there for the butt fumble. Like, I've seen enough. I think I've seen enough where it's good to be reminded of what I had back in the day, but good to be away from it a little bit.
What years were you on the beat for Newsday?
That's a great question. For Newsday, I started 19 days after Tim Tebow was traded. And that was my first beat ever. Like, a lot of people start college beat, I went straight from first beat ever was Tim Tebow. And I remember his introductory press conference. There was 250 media people, and I was like, what is this? So that was 2012. And then I left the beat, I want to say August 2017. So I saw Rex and then
Todd Bowles, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Rex and Todd Bowles. Was Mike Tannenbaum, he made the trade for
Mike, I remember Mike's, I feel like Mike's, I was like a backup beat writer right when Mike was let go.
Okay.
So I wasn't, So I remember being in the press room when he came down and he said goodbye to all of us, and, it was really emotional. And then shortly thereafter, I officially took over the beat.
How is working with Mike and Rex now at ESPN?
Oh my God. Well, it's funny. I just did Countdown on Sunday, and I, right before we went on air, I heard Rex's voice, and I was like, is that Rex, future head coach of the New York Jets? Is that my guy? Listen, because I was with Rex, it's great. No, if anyone had told me, though, when I was sitting in Cortland, New York during Jets training camp, that guy that I'm asking questions of, and that former GM that I was trying to get to answer my questions back in the day would be on set, that'd be wild. But I also covered Bart early in my career. I covered Bart, Scott, and Damien Woody. So it feels like family. Like, it doesn't feel like work. Like, I've known those guys. I've known those guys a long time.
What do you think about the fact that the Jets are going to use Mike and the 33rd team to help their coaching and GM search? It's definitely, it's an interesting dynamic that they're going back to Mike, and then the fact that now Mike is also at ESPN.
Yeah, I will say it's very unconventional, because what I've seen on Twitter is like, oh, you're using the GM that you fired to help you find the GM that's going to turn everything around. But I will say Mike Tannenbaum is very connected, has a lot of relationships through colleges and NFL. So it did surprise me, but when I think back to being on the beat, nothing surprises me about the Jets. So they're going to try to find, I bet, when they used Corn Ferry to get John Idzik, that was the GM I had for a lot of my Jets tenure. So at this point, try anything, because what they've done so far has not really worked.
And what do you think of Rex constantly campaigning to get a second chance with the Jets?
Listen, people have to understand, when I covered Rex, we would literally be there on a Friday, and I would say, like, Rex, are you the greatest defensive mind ever? And he said, damn right, you're damn right I am. So Rex saying I should be that guy, they should have hired me, that is so Rex. Like, that doesn't even register as weird to me. And I love it. I think the NFL, as much as we love Rex, I love Rex at ESPN, calling him a colleague, I think the NFL I think the NFL misses his energy. I mean, let's go get a goddamn snack. Like that, that's cinema. Like that is cinema. That's the greatest Hard Knocks there ever was. So I would love the idea of Rex being back in Seattle.
Yeah, and in Rex's defense, like he goes on Bart Scott and Alan Hahn's radio show every week, and they ask him about it. So like they ask him, and you know his personality, you know what that answer is going to be. So do you think that Tannenbaum now being involved in the search, does that give Rex like an in? Is that actually helpful to the fact that he wants the job and now the person that hired him is involved in the search for the next coach and GM?
I mean, it doesn't hurt, but I don't think Rex Ryan, like even if the 33rd team wasn't involved in this, Rex Ryan just has to say, when was the last time we were consistently good? When was the last time we were in the playoffs back-to-back years? It's been a long time, and he was at the helm. I will say, I don't think it really, for me, what I've seen over the years is Woody Johnson, the owner, pays attention to the fan base. He is locked in. He has people that are locked in on what fans are saying, what they want. So if there was groundswell from fans, like, we want Rex, the same way fans were buying billboards to get people fired or get people hired, like, he would listen to that. I don't think he needs an assist from Mike Tannenbaum, but obviously the guy who hired you or the guy that you know really well, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah. What about even Eric Mangini now is expressed interest in returning to the Jets? Like for a franchise that hasn't had much success in their history, the idea of like all these recycled candidates are raising their hands, it seems strange.
So you're not gonna get me to say anything bad about Eric Mangini. He went to Wesleyan University like I did, and Belichick. But I mean, listen, am I surprised nowadays? Like, people are they're saying it publicly, but those conversations are had privately. So I think the Jets are at a state where they have tried everything. You saw, like, literally Woody Johnson, like, the fans wanted Devontae's in the building. Like, getting Aaron Rodgers, like, we're going to try it again, and, with a future Hall of Famer, and nothing has worked. I mean, I did joke with Rex, like, if you get the job, obviously I got to jump back on the beat. Like, that's the only thing that would make sense. Like, we just run it back.
The bye week was anything but quiet for the Jets this season, beginning with Joe Douglas getting fired, and then Diana Rossini reporting the Jets were thinking about benching Rodgers during the season, and then even cutting him during the season. Then Ian Rappaport kind of comes out and says that Rodgers has been playing hurt throughout the year, and saying his future with the Jets is still unclear. What should the Jets fans kind of make of those conflicting reports?
I think Jets fans at this point should be thinking about who are we going to draft next year, in all seriousness. And I hate that for Jets fans, because if anything, this fan base deserves to see a Super Bowl, right? But beyond this bye week, if you're a Jets fan, you weren't feeling particularly confident about the direction of this team. If you're a Jets fan, can you confidently say, yes, we want Aaron Rodgers back next year based off of the production, based off of the fact that he's about to be 41 in I think a couple weeks, if not sooner. And then next year, that means he's going to be in the season at 42 years old, coming off this Achilles injury that he's had. So I don't know if this bye week, it didn't make you feel good if you're a Jets fan, but were you feeling good already? And did you feel good about the leadership? You already fired your head coach after 5 weeks. So, and the interim head coach, Jeff Ulbrich, they haven't done anything particularly impressive under him either. So, a lot of questions the Jets have to answer, and I feel for Jets fans, seriously.
When you were a local beat reporter, did it ever bother you when national reporters got scoops?
1,000%. I don't think you can be a reporter and not care about that because you're there every day. You're there every day. That's why it's a unique position now for me, because I was there every day, and you would see national people come in and teams sometimes it felt certain teams would roll out the red carpet for the national guys that would come through, or women, whatever. And now I'm the national person that like kind of helicopters in, and so I know what it is on both sides. I don't think you can be a local beat reporter and not care that somebody else is getting the scoop.
You've been a local reporter for the Jets, the Washington football team, the Bill. Were you a beat reporter?
I was a columnist. I was a
Columnist for
columnist in
both.
Buffalo. Yeah. Very short time.
So how did the Jets compare in terms of like leaks? Like was it easy to find somebody willing to talk?
Was it easy to find someone to talk? Yeah. Yeah, but I don't think the Jets are. I mean, I don't know what outside perception is. Do you think that leaks come out of there more often than other franchises? I mean, like as a reporter, my job.
So I'm a Jets fan, and it feels like that, but that could also just be because like I'm paying attention.
You pay attention, right. So like every there's 32 teams, so like every week we got to find stuff out about teams. So I think especially during like my Jets tenure, like I think what bothers fans, it's not necessarily information being leaked out, but it's the type of information. And I think, is there like negativity? Was there negativity around the Jets beat when I was there? Sure. But I think what frustrates a lot of Jets fans, and as one, you could tell me if I'm wrong, I think it's not just the leaking, it's the leaking when we're not winning. It's like, it's always, why are we the laughing stock, or why are, same old Jets? And honestly, like I had spending time there, I had pushed back on the same old Jets stuff when Saleh and Douglas came on, only because sort of like let these guys do what they're going to do before every loss is like, oh, here we go again. Well, let's see if it's the case. Unfortunately, the Jets still haven't found their way despite making every sort of move possible. But I don't think this particular is much different. I will say their owner does care about what other people think. So he's got people checking the socials, and they got their ears to the streets from the standpoint of like what fans want. So
is in terms of running an NFL organization, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
No, that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. And it's nothing against Woody or anything like that. I just think, because I see it, Jerry Jones pays a lot of attention to what is said. And Jerry has created the biggest franchise that there is, despite not having won Super Bowls and probably since before you were born. So I don't think it's great, because if you're an owner, most oftentimes you don't know football like that. Like you shouldn't. Your forte is making money, so you're supposed to hire smart football people to do the football things. So if you are listening to what the outside is saying, you may not allow the football people to actually do the job. They sold you on a vision. Are you giving them the 3, 4, 5, 6 years to implement that vision? Or are you now changing course because of what is said on television or what's said on Twitter? And I don't think that's just a Jets problem or a Woody Johnson problem. That happens a lot of places. But you at least have to trust the people that you hire to do the job well.
Did the Jets seem different when Woody was in London and Christopher Johnson was running the team, or is it largely the same operation?
When was Chris in charge? Early, because I was gone for the Gase years. Like I barely was around them for Gase.
So it would have been early 2017 is when.
Yeah, because Chris hired Saleh. You know what? The sad thing about Robert Saleh is, like, I remember being at the Super Bowl and interviewing him, and the infectious energy and like his defense in San Francisco. Like that man literally had to have somebody pull him back from the sidelines because he was like on the field. And so I was excited when he got the job, thinking like, okay, somewhere in between a Todd and Rex from like a personality standpoint, at least publicly. That's what you thought. Like, okay, he's got some energy, but He's pretty level. And, I just, either way, I just felt bad for Salah. I just didn't see all of this transpiring. But as far as, where things run differently, I mean, it has to be, right? Like the owner is not here. Woody now can, like I said this on TV, like after the Broncos, I think it was heading into the Broncos game. Oh, no, after the Broncos game, it's like London is a must win. Like we got to win London. And, he calls Salah and like other people in the room. It's like, this is must win. And obviously they went to London and didn't win. Well, when Woody's not here, there isn't that same sort of like you can, Woody's going to have sometimes, I don't want to say a knee-jerk reaction to things, but as the owner, this is your baby, this is your franchise. And so if you've made it clear in your mind to other people, this needs to happen, that needs to happen, well then, yeah, sometimes you're going to say like, all right, what needs to be done? Let's change stuff up in a way that, when you're not here, that same sort of intensity isn't here.
Right. We're recording this Tuesday afternoon. Rogers is actually on Pat McAfee show right now. And he said that he doesn't talk to Diana Rossini and had questioned why people would talk to her. So I'm just curious from your standpoint as a reporter, if you report something on a player or a coach, and then that player or coach denies the report, is that something that you feel the need to defend, or you just kind of trust your reporting and whatever they say after that, you leave it alone?
I mean, that's happened in my career. Like I've literally watched this happen, watched with my own eyes, reported it, and the person went, in front of at the presser and said like, I don't know where that came from. That never happened. It's like I think, I've had a lot of back and forth with players. Like you sometimes write things and sometimes write things and they have a problem with it. And what they don't, I think it's about the time and place, right? Like Aaron Rodgers, like I wouldn't tweet, like if Aaron Rodgers is like, I don't know why anybody would talk to Kimberley Martin. Like I wouldn't go tweeting at Aaron Rodgers, like that's BS. Like I think as a reporter, listen, the hard thing about being a reporter is people don't want certain things out. That doesn't mean certain things aren't true. That doesn't mean reporters always get it right either. But as a reporter, unfortunately, that's the gig. That's the gig of reporting stuff that sometimes GMs and owners and players don't want the fans to know. And it's very easy. And I think in this climate too, like people are so quick to believe athlete X over reporter, and that's not necessarily the case either. So yeah, I don't take too much thought because he even said I don't have Adam Schefter's number. Like I don't he texted me this, and it's sort of like, I think Schefter's made it a joke now. Like he's prefaced it, and that's what you have to do. Like as long as you are, I don't speak to other people's reporting, but if you know that the information's right, then screw it. Like it's not, you don't need the athlete to then co-sign it,
Yeah. I'm sure there's so much for being a reporter, like being a trusted source and wanting players to be able to talk to you, I'm sure is very important. So then like having Rodgers or any athlete potentially slander that.
Let me say it is very frustrating. I think at this stage of my career, I take some things with a grain of salt. I think earlier in my career, starting off, like your reputation, for me, your reputation is everything. Like for me personally, it's not about being first on something. For me, it will always be like what I say, I'm right on, and I know that I'm right. So I don't get that thrill of like, oh, I beat, so and so on something. That's not my jam. And I think when your reputation is the cornerstone of who you are, and you care about that the most, it used to bother me a lot. I would take it personally that player, whatever, would deny something that he literally told me at his locker room yesterday. And And I'm one of those reporters, like on a beat, like if I wrote something on a Wednesday, like damn sure I'm in the locker room Thursday, because I will look you in the face like, you didn't say that. But I think now recognizing like there are all sorts of games within the game, and like it sometimes athletes have to say, and I'm not speaking specifically about Rodgers. I'm just saying in general,
Yep.
coaches, GMs, like coaches and GMs lie like no other at the podium, knowing that they literally just had you in their office and told you X, Y, and Z, but they can't say certain things publicly. But that doesn't mean that the reporting that you did is wrong. So I think at this stage of my career, I understand what it is, and I have to be able to look at myself at night when I say something on air or as a beat writer when I wrote it. So just knowing that some people don't like the gig, and it is what it is.
You said the Jets, that was your first beat.
Mm-hmm.
What were you doing before then? Like when?
I was a general assignment reporter. So I was like, I was started my career at the Bergen Record as an intern, and then was promoted to like a full-time GA. So I did a lot of Yankees. I did a lot of Yankees and Mets. People don't know I started baseball. I did a lot of Knicks for Newsday and Nets when I was at the Bergen Record. And like Hofstra, Stony Brook. I'm from Brooklyn. So I did a lot of like St. John's and Hofstra, Stony Brook type of stuff. And then the Jets beat came about because my sports editor at Newsday had said, listen, you got to take a beat, either cover the Mets, cover the Jets, or cover the Brooklyn Nets, who had just moved to Brooklyn. And I had spent time as a backup on the Jets beat, like I was filling in for Jets, Giants and stuff. And I said, like I've been around the Jets, might as well. Did not think that football was going to be like I'd be doing football primarily from that point on, but here we are.
Was it always sports journalism that you wanted to do, or were you more focused on being a reporter, more focused on covering sports?
Yeah, like I was a tomboy from the beginning. So one day I turned on channel 11 and the Yankees were on. I think it was like 95. And so had I turned on channel 9, maybe I would have seen the Mets and been a Mets fan. But yeah, so big into baseball. Like baseball was like number one. Huge Knicks fan. Like my number when I played basketball, it was 3. I wore 3 and I wore 34. I was like the Charles Oakley of my 8th grade girls basketball team, which means like I would just knock people around basically. But yeah, so I've always loved sports. Now, I think being in sports, working it, being in locker rooms, seeing, like once you cover the Yankees as a reporter, like that Yankee fan in me, like did have to die. Like I do want them to do well, but I don't cheer for them the same way that I used to, like all encompassing kind of passion. Because I think once you see how the sausage is made, once you're around different people, once you're, around different teams, I just think to be objective, I think you just can't be the same fan you were. At least that's how I feel. So definitely was rooting for the Yankees in the playoffs this year, and was crushed. Was crushed there. Dodgers, okay. But yeah, I've always been a sports girly, but I don't know if sports will always be the thing that I end up in. We'll see.
Interesting. What sports writers or sportscasters did you look up to when you were younger?
Oh my gosh. So the only person that I will still to this day fangirl out over is Robin Roberts. And I've met her. She was on podcasts that I had. Like she is by far the North Star. But funny enough, Mad Dog. My dad and I would listen as a kid to Mike Francesa and Mad Dog in the car driving around. So when people now hit me up and say like, who's that old white guy yelling at you? Like, what is his problem? I'm like, first of all, put some respect on his name. And he can yell at me anytime he wants because I will yell right back. No, but there was one day on First Take, like, we're asked like, what's our biggest, like, the person that we were most, amazed to meet, like what pro or athlete or whatever sports moment. And I was like, the first time I met Mad Dog, I was just like, dude, I used to listen to you. Like, this is incredible. Like if my dad was still alive, he would be so tickled at The fact that I get to sit next to Mad Dog and rag on him and all that. So there aren't many people, like, I'm from New York City. I don't get impressed with a lot.
Yeah.
But Robin Roberts and Mad Dog it's pretty cool. I still think it's cool that I get to work with him.
Yeah, no, that is really cool. I grew up a diehard Mike and the Mad Dog fan as well. I was always listening on the radio and watching on Yes.
Yeah.
That was my show for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
What challenges have you faced as you worked to break into this industry, just as a woman in a male dominated industry? How challenging has that been? What challenges have you faced?
Well, so for me, I feel like my career is twofold because I had to break in twice. I had to break in as a writer, and now I'm in TV. Like, so TV is completely different. I didn't really have any dreams of being on TV. I never really saw that. I think I reluctantly kind of was inching towards this because mentors were kind of telling me, like, you gotta be able to do all things. You gotta be able to be on air and write and all that. The tough thing, I remember in my career, like, and I don't think I'm like that old, but when I started, there still weren't a ton of women in locker rooms. So I still was always like the only, or one of like two, or one of three, if on a good day. So understanding that I had to sort of shift my mindset. Like, I went in there wanting to be one of the guys. Like, I wanted the players to see me like they saw Rich Samini. And it's like, Rich Samini and I couldn't be any more different. And I love Rich. But a white guy from Long Island is not like, we don't move the same way. We don't have the same interests. We don't think the same, and we shouldn't. And then early in my career, I think my second year on the Jets beat, I just said, screw it. Like, if I'm going to connect with these players, I got to connect based off of this is who I am, and I want to know more about you. The transition to TV, like, I can't even describe how insanely hard it is to have your first TV job be at a place like ESPN. And when you get there and you have orientation the same week, I had orientation March 9th through March 12th of 2020. And like, I remember driving home from Bristol and like the NBA had shut down, right? So I didn't, at first time having a contract, didn't understand, like, do I still have a job? Like, what, and not understanding what TV, like how to do TV. And because we're all trying not to die, like, nobody could explain it. You know what I mean? Like, nobody could explain to me, like, okay, this is the job you're supposed to. So the thing I heard all the time was like, oh, other reporters who had my job were like, oh my God, you miss like the glory days of ESPN. Like, this is so different. Like, you can't go in a locker room. Like, that's crazy, you know? So yeah, I think the hardest thing is reinventing yourself, challenging yourself to try stuff that you may not be good at. But the male dominated thing, yeah, there are challenges. I do think, though, that there are challenges that are very specific to me as a Black woman versus other women. So I don't group all like women into the same thing. It is challenging. But yeah, I mean, you know, as you try to build relationships with people, like, it's just trying to build authentic relationships that aren't strictly transactional. Like, that's always been my thing. Takes time. Relationships take a lot of time in the NFL and in sports, period. So, you know, you may not see a payoff, you know, this year, but maybe a couple years from now, a player remembers that you know, something that you said or wrote, and it pays dividends later. So I think it's just always challenging yourself to be okay with not being good at something, and saying, like, again, I bring up I'm from New York a lot because I feel like if you're from New York City, you kind of feel like, okay, if I can make it in New York, I can make it anywhere. Like, I survived the Jets beat, cool. Like, anything, you know, it's like I survived transitioning to TV during a pandemic and figuring it out. And there were stumbles and all sorts of stuff that people put on YouTube and horrible moments, but that's the human experience, right? Like, we gotta, you know, fall and get back up.
Is it harder to build trust with professional athletes or executives of like ESPN executives or bosses? Like, is it harder to build relationships with players and teams, or harder to build relationships with a
Well,
job?
I mean, how often, like ESPN is so big, like how often am I really talking to my boss? Like it's like I don't really I would say athletes, because I think like your boss has hired you. Like they know you're, like, at least in my case, it's like um I don't worry that I don't have like a great relationship with my boss. Like we had the interview, we know I'm good. Like we kick it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we're good. Um but with athletes, I think especially today, I think like there's so much like anti-media sentiment out there that I think it's just harder. Plus, all athletes now seem to have their own sort of podcast, or
Right.
from their own agency can do productions and documentaries. And the hard thing I think as a reporter is telling an athlete like, "Hey, you should let me tell your story." They're gonna be like, "Why? I could just tell it myself," which is fine. Um, but I think that's been the biggest hurdle. I will say I've worked really hard in my life as a writer and now on TV to sort of, again, the reputation is everything. So establishing credibility with people. So when I go in different locker rooms, when I go into different, offices of GMs or whoever, like they know who I am, like the reputation precedes me, right? So dealing with PR people, like they understand like a player may be reticent to talk to me, but I think if you built your reputation in a way where people know like, hey, she may be tough, she may ask you questions you don't want to answer, but she's fair and she's good people. Like that, to me, if I can walk away from this business and people say like, oh, Kmart, like she's tough, like she'll like tell you what she thinks, but she's smart and she's good, like then I've pretty much done what I came to do.
What do you think about the NFL players trying to keep reporters and interviews out of the locker room? Does that how much does that
You know
impact
what
your
is,
job?
I find that topic so frustrating because I've talked to so many different teams about it, and the teams I talk to are like, the players don't care. Because even
Mm,
during COVID, it was like, hey, we can't have reporters in the locker room. We have to take you to a separate room where the Zoom is set up. And players during COVID were like, we don't care. Just let them in the locker room. This is annoying, because they don't want to have to walk and do extra steps to sit down in front of a computer and all that. Um, Listen, I don't think all reporters are awesome. I don't think all reporters are the greatest. And I think some questions that they have, are, is it like, are you trying to do a job, or are you trying to go viral, or what? Like you could say that about any profession. They're just people that I don't think are particularly good. Fine. But in general, most reporters like understand like, you come off the practice field, this is our time to get you. Otherwise, you just disperse and we can't ask you any questions. And no offense, I just feel like it's a small, very tiny group trying to make this a bigger conversation when the large majority of players are like, we could not care less about it. But in my mind, I think most of us go into the locker room to do the job. Like, I don't want to see your ass. Like, let's be honest. Like, you think that's fun for me? It's not. So, like, I try to keep my eyes up. I try to wait, me personally, especially as a woman, like I try to give guys space. Like I don't approach them unless they're dressed and stuff like that. It's not a great environment for us too, but you also learn a lot about guys. Like I remember, pictures that guys had in their locker room, and you spark a conversation off of that, or you'd see something, or they'd want to show you something. Like in the locker room is how we develop a lot of those relationships
yeah.
that help us do our job. And I just think we're kind of straying away from the genuine like connections that we could have with players.
When you mentioned before the transition to ESPN or the transition to doing TV, when you went to ESPN, did you go there with the focus of being able to be on TV?
Oh yeah, no, I was told in the interview, this is a TV job. This is
Okay.
not a writing. And
Did you do much TV before that at all?
I
Like
had done no TV. I hadn't
nothing.
done. I mean, I did like at Yahoo, we would have like videos that we would do, but it was not. I mean, it was not anywhere close to what this job actually entailed. So when I say the transition to this type of job, like I would not advise anybody to go this route. I'm proud of myself that I'm still here, but it's hard, especially during, you don't have TV training, like a lot of the terminology, like sig out, like LTT, like speeding, like a lot of the terminology, I had to ask producers, like, what is that? But again, you just figure it out. Like you just figure it out. And especially during a pandemic and during the pandemic, actually, I was supposed to come back to do the draft, or I was come back to Bristol and studio like a couple months later. And now we're in a pandemic and I'm home. I had no ESPN phone. I had no ESPN equipment. I didn't have anything. So I was actually writing columns, which I liked. I was writing features for, at the time, The Undefeated, that's what it's called back in the day. And then for .com. So that was cool. And then when I finally got equipment, I was doing first take off of FaceTime and Skype. This was like really sad times. Like I just didn't know, it just was just not the greatest setup. But again, you figure it out.
Well, yeah. So what was it like getting to know people,
So
starting a new job and having to do that all through Skype and stuff?
so all of the relationships that I created had to be over text or virtual, or like just getting like Greeny knew me from being, following me because of the Jets,
Yeah.
but we didn't like know each other. All the Sports Center people, like everything was on Zoom and FaceTime at first. And I think people hopefully enjoy working with me. I hope I think really, again, I'm all about genuine relationships. So it is hard when you're not in studio with people. Like my first year and a half, when we were finally allowed to come into the studio, it was like after I'd been there probably a year and a half. And then when I first got back in studio, like there was no hair and makeup. So you're like kind of like doing things on your own. But it was cool. It was like, not ideal, but feel pretty good because the guys I'm with now, like Greeny, like that's my guy. Like Steven, he's cool. Like everybody, I work with some really, really good people. So I've been fortunate.
What made you know that you'd be good at TV?
Nothing made me know that I would be good at TV. Like I did not seek out ESPN. This was not,
Okay.
God, I can't wait to work for ESPN. I was happy. I was happy as a columnist, like being a columnist. I was happy at Yahoo doing columns and features. And we would do some projects where we could do some sit down interviews, like and stuff for the website. But ESPN had reached out and said, hey, we're just kind of getting our list of people we might want to look at in the future. It was Miami Super Bowl. Do you want to come talk to us? And I said, sure. But that day, I literally had a sit down interview for Yahoo with Dak Prescott scheduled. And it was before he had gotten his the last big contract he had gotten.
Right.
And I was supposed to sit down with Dak. And so when I sat down with ESPN, it was like, I'm good. Like I'm literally about to go talk to Dak Prescott. Like I want to get to know you guys at some point. Like it's like I'm sure we'll cross paths. Like I'm sure, because they were like, we don't have a job. We're good. Like we just want to get to know you. And then 4 days later, I was offered a job. So I didn't, and I was offered the job without an agent too. So this was not like me conspiring, like, how do I get to ESPN? I remember being at baggage claim after Super Bowl, like standing, waiting for my luggage and getting a call offering me a deal. And I was like, okay, I probably should get an agent now. So no, I don't think, I don't know. I don't really think about like, oh, I was made for TV or I'm good at TV. I just like to have fun with the people I'm in studio with.
Yeah.
I like going at Stephen A. Like the feedback I get when I'm at stadiums on Sundays is about, gosh, I keep giving it to Stephen A. I love it when you get after him. That's really what people seem to like know me for, which is funny. But no, it's cool. Like I've had fun, and like I said, I've worked with some good people.
Yeah, the back and forths with Stephen A. and also I think your facial expressions, like I could just imagine being Chris Russo sitting there and thinking I'm making a great point, and then looking across and seeing your expression and being like, I guess this one's not working.
No, and I got him great last week too. Yeah, the facial expressions, I think some people think it's like forced. I have no control over my face. So when I'm listening to Steven, I'm like, what? Like, what did you say? Or like Chris, and I'm like, come on, bro.
Yeah.
So they're not forced. Like, ask my mom, she'll tell you since I was like a child. She probably hated that about me. But yeah, like it's been cool. It's been cool that people I'm on assignment at games, like in stadiums to cover their teams. And they're just like, I love you on Get Up. I love you on First Take. So that does make me feel good. Or I get young students or young reporters that'll say, you being yourself gives me confidence to be myself. Like, I think that's what it is. It's not, I don't think about this job from the standpoint of like, oh, how great this is for me. It's cool. I'm very blessed and thankful. But I think about like if I could encourage other young women to see themselves as like, yeah, you could go toe to toe with Stephen A. Um, and you should want to do that. Like there are other avenues for you to be in sports media and to hold your own and to feel confident telling football players who played the game, I don't agree and here's why. Like that to me is the exciting part about being at ESPN. I think representation is really important and people tend to be what they see, right? So hopefully there's a swarm of young women that are coming for Stephen A's chair.
And credit Stephen A for welcoming that, or at least, I mean,
One
it,
thou-
it seems it seems
1000%.
like he welcomes that.
I'll speak from my experience with Steven. Like I'm 100% on his show because Stephen A wanted me on his show because he thinks I'm good. He thinks we all add something different. And he feels like when we all kind of shine and succeed and have moments, like it makes the show better. Like, don't get me wrong, he's got ego and I'll tell it to him. But he is, at least for me, he had like before my second contract, like he took me to lunch. Like he is a good mentor, resource, sounding board. He's insane, but I think we all kind of are, and I love him even though he's a mess. So yeah,
Did you know him before you went to ESPN?
knew of him. When I was a reporter, probably doing like early in my career. I think I was probably covering high school sports at that point, or just got on the Jets beat. I saw him at a journalism convention, NABJ, and I think he came up to me and was like, keep doing your thing. And he spoke in a very like low, soft voice, and I was like, wow, Stephen A's speaking voice is like real chill. It's not, and then you get on set and you're like,
Yeah.
ah! But we didn't know each other like that. I think he was just doing a nice thing, like, trying to like say something nice to like a young person still trying to find their way. So I always appreciated that. But we didn't have like a real relationship before I came to ESPN. So I'm very appreciative of him.
How did you get into the rotating cast of First Take?
Well, it's funny. Since I started again during the pandemic. So I was at home and like I think the First Take producers had asked, like, hey, Kim had asked my like NFL bosses, like, hey, we'd like to have Kimberley on. Like, and I think there was some hesitation, like, oh, is she like gonna be okay? Like on First Take? Like that's like she just started. And I think from jump, for whatever reason, the morning shows like have been really good. Like I think it's because you're with people and can bounce off them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm from New York City. So not really intimidated by much. Plus Stephen A's from Queens. I'm from Brooklyn. So off the bat, there's that
Yeah.
hierarchy. So yeah, I wasn't intimidated. I didn't think, oh, that's Stephen A. So I think that's what made the transition somewhat easier. Like I'm not sort of shy in that respect. But it literally was, hey, we'd like to try her out. And then there were holidays and I said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. I'm new, like, would be nice to get in studio. And so from there, it's just kind of been that.
Are the atmospheres of First Take and Get Up different?
Oh my God, yeah. Yes, yes. But I don't think like I think people think like Get Up is like going to be more serious than like First Take is just people barking at each other. Get Up, we have a lot of fun. I think the only difference with Get Up is that it feels like more of an ensemble cast together. Whereas like First Take, it's like I I get Steven in the chin once, and then Doggy will come and like deliver his blow, and then Steven will have the final say. Where I feel like Get Up is more, we go at it on Get Up. I remember when Chris Canty and I would have Wednesdays together, and people would message me like, "Why is he always yelling at you?" I'm like, he's not yelling. That's just Chris. That's how he's a big man, and that's how he talks. But we get into it's not first take like, but we do go at each other. But we do have the fun games where we're smashing helmets, and so we're all together. It definitely feels more of like an ensemble sort of cast, and you get to see everybody's personality in those 2 hours. Where I think first take, we have different days, and we're not all in the same segment together. But and Stephen A thinks he has the final word on first take. I guess he should because it's his show, but yeah.
Did you ever hear from the Colts or Jim Irsay?
Ha! No.
No.
No. And I was like, that kind of caught me off guard. And I will say, so this is when I say me being a woman in this industry, I segment it from like being a Black woman is a different experience. Because what I found in that moment was sort of like, so Doggy, and I remember Doggy going first, and Doggy, I remember thinking, ooh, you're being really intense there with that Irsay criticism. Like he went in. Stephen A went in, but a little softer. And then I tacked on at the end, and I thought I was the most mild-mannered of the three. And so in that moment, for the owner of a football team to kind of call me mean and ugly or whatever the hell, I was like, now what? What in the hell? And for it just, and the reaction was sort of like, he, just pay him no mind. He's out there. He'll say whatever he wants. And it's sort of like the owner of an NFL franchise, like what? Like, I'm like, if Jerry Jones had done, or somebody, like, I feel like we would have paid a little bit more attention, or people would have at least like responded to him or called them and been like, what is happening? But it just kind of
it's not just a random fan on Twitter.
It's that like legit like shocked the hell out of me, and I was like, nobody thinks that's weird. Okay. I just think a different owner says that to a different reporter who looks a different way. And also he didn't take any shots of the dudes, and I was like, now that does speak volumes that you bypassed all those guys running you over, and had smoke for me, but then told me about his mammy. I don't know. It was weird, but anyway.
Yeah. No. So no apology, I guess.
No.
So do you want to do more writing? Like get back to more writing, or?
Yeah, I will. I haven't figured out in what capacity, because I think you can write scripture with documentaries, you can write books, you can write columns. I think writing is the thing. Some days I feel like I'm a writer who does television. Some days I think like, how do I figure out how to do both? Right now in season, it's really tough. Like, I got TV Wednesday, Thursday, got game prep, fly to another city to kind of do the writing that I want to do. The profiles, columns, stuff like that. But yeah, I'll get back there. And that's sort of the angle. I think I'll be happy when I'm able to kind of use that muscle again more often.
So what are your goals right now? Like what would you like? Because you kind of hinted before that your future doesn't have to be attached to sports. Like what else?
Yeah, I think I'm really happy at ESPN. I think it's been a really good learning ground for me, and there's so much more that I have to learn and that I can push myself to do. But I say I don't know if sports is the end all be all, only because I never saw ESPN in my future.
Yeah.
I wanted desperately to be a columnist. I wanted to be the female Mike Wilbon at the Washington Post. I never thought I would get to the Washington Post, and I did. And I looked around and said, okay, it's time for me to move on. So like, I never saw the Washington Post in my future, definitely never saw Yahoo, never saw ESPN. So for me, I think I'm in this space of like open to like not limiting myself to thinking like, okay, I have to, I would love to be at ESPN for 30 more years if they'll have me. But also understanding that there was life before ESPN, and like there's life after. We'll see. My contract's up in May. We'll see where we go. But I'm good. I think, as long as you're challenging yourself, and me personally I like telling stories about people. Like I do like that. I think we have so many great players in the NFL who have a lot of stories to tell. And if they will allow us to tell it, not just their own agencies, I think that'd be cool. But yeah, I'm not sure what the future holds. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's good, so I don't sort of lock myself into a particular future.
So you and Stephen A will be negotiating contracts with ESPN at the same time.
I've told him, I'm like, bruh, you better leave some coins on the table for me. I don't know. Yeah, this is I've been hearing about his contract for a long time. I just want that, honest to God, I just want that to get resolved, because I think, like, I love him. Like, I just can't imagine ESPN without him, So like my contract's like, off in the distant future. I got to get through a bunch of stuff in the Super Bowl first and the combine and all that. But yeah, it's interesting that he and I are up the same year. So we'll see. If listen, Brandon, if I'm not here next year, just know Stephen A took all my money and there was nothing left over, and it is what it is. But his contract a little bit more complicated than mine, just a little bit.
Kimberly, you were great. Thank you so much for coming on the
Thank
podcast
you.
today. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
That is Kimberly A. Martin. I'm Brandon Contis. This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Please rate and subscribe to this podcast. Please also subscribe to Awful Announcing's YouTube page. But regardless of how you consume Awful Announcing and the Awful Announcing Podcast, thanks for listening and be good.
Thanks for listening to the Awful Announcing Podcast. For the latest news spanning the sports media landscape and more, check out awfulannouncing.com and follow us at Awful Announcing.